So now we're going to take a look in a bit of detail at sprint meetings. And first of all, we're going to focus on the sprint planning, as this is one of the most challenging meetings to run successfully. So this meeting is attended by everyone. So the product owner, the Scrum Master and development team. So the product owner presents the backlog and presents which items are the highest priority in that backlog. The development team then asks any questions for clarification. The development team then defines the tasks that need to be done. The team then estimates those tasks. The product owner has the opportunity to reprioritize those items based on the time to deliver. The Scrum Master then ensures that the team keep focused and disciplined. So this is an example of a product backlog, and the tool that's being used here is Jira. Now Jira looks a little bit different from this now, but you can't really go into an enterprise environment without seeing Jira, as it's such a commonly used tool, or something very similar to it. So essentially it allows you to break down the different tasks and product backlog items that the team is working on so that you can clearly see the status as the team works on those items, and those items can be moved through the different status stages through the sprint. Now, product backlog items or customer requirements are presented from the customer perspective, and those are called user stories. So a user story is a short, simple description of a feature told from the perspective of the user who desires the new capability. So it would normally be a user or a customer of the system. They typically follow a very simple template. So as a user role, I want a particular goal in order that I get a particular benefit. So a good example of a user story, and this is based on a live events conference and a booking solution. So as a conference attendee, I want to be able to register online so that I can register quickly and cut down on paperwork. But how do we know we are fulfilling the requirements of that user story? Well, in order that we know how to fulfill those requirements of that user story, we have something called acceptance criteria, which essentially breaks down in a bit of detail exactly what we need to do in order to meet that requirement and that user story. So in this example, a user cannot submit a form without completing all mandatory fields, and they've actually specified the different mandatory fields required, so the name, the address, the phone number and the booking reference number. They've also specified that the information from the form needs to be stored in the registrations database. They also mention that protection against spam needs to be working. Well, that's a serious compliance issue, so that's quite important that something like that is also included. Users can pay by credit card using the existing company online payment system. Well, that's quite specific. So it's not any credit card, it's actually the specific one already used by the existing business. An acknowledgement email is sent to the user after submitting the form. This should be using the conference email template design. So that's quite a specific set of requirements. So as a designer or a developer, you will have a good idea of exactly how you need to fulfill those requirements in order to deliver to what the user requires. So what is acceptance criteria? Well, it's essentially asking fundamentally, did we build the right product, or did we build the product right? So they are the conditions that the product must satisfy to be accepted by the user or product owner or customer. Projects often succeed or fail based on the customer's perceived or documented acceptance criteria. So it's really, really critical that that is very clear and that communication flows easily between the customers and the stakeholders, the product owner and the team that has to deliver it. So really the goal of acceptance criteria is to clarify what the team should build before they start the work. And it's really to ensure that everyone has a common understanding of the problem. It's there to help the team members know when a story is complete and to help verify the story via tests. But how do we know when that story is complete? How do we know when that acceptance criteria is delivered and the standard it's delivered to? Well, in order to be able to assess that and measure that, we have something called the definition of done. And you use the definition of done really to assess when work on the product increment is complete. Now, there are different definitions for done. You can have a definition of done for a feature, so a story or a product backlog item. You can have a definition of done for a sprint, so that's a collection of features developed within a sprint. You can have a definition of done for a release, so a potentially shippable state. Often what means done to a product owner is different to the expectations of the rest of the team. The definition of done needs to be agreed and negotiated between the team and the product owner. So an example on the right hand side of this slide is a very simple definition of done. So here we have a summary which says the unit test must be passed, the code must be reviewed, the acceptance criteria must be met, functional tests passed, non-functional requirements met, and product owner must accept the user story. I would say that something like that is an absolute bare minimum. Many teams actually publish their definitions of done, and it's actually possible to search online and find other definitions of done as examples and templates that you can use for your own projects. And I've included a couple of examples in the course resources. So that was a bit of a dig into the sprint planning and what you need to consider in terms of product backlog, user stories, how you essentially write and realise those requirements and communicate that to the team. So now we're going to dig into estimation, and estimation is especially challenging for new teams, so it's worth spending a little bit of time on. But before we do that, I'm going to give you the opportunity to grab a coffee and take a break, and I'll see you in the next lesson.